Welcome to Studio 42. We have a special guest today, the Director of Emergency Communications with Hamilton County, Andrew Knapp. Andy, welcome.
Good morning, Matt. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Well, thank you. We invited you, and you accepted today because we want to talk about some of the emergency communications available to people with neurological or physical disabilities. Should they live alone, or even if they don't, how they can reach out to 911 or any number and receive emergency response, whether it be for a medical emergency, fire, or even just to report a crime. We know that there are various special services available that you offer because we do have folks that maybe cannot communicate like others, and it enables them to be able to transfer information. I just want to hear from you about some of those services and about the 911 program here in Hamilton County.
Sure. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much for taking the time to hear about our industry. And I say our industry in that I've been in the 911 business since 1988, started as a call taker dispatcher, and I've worked my way up through the ranks to the now the director role. In Hamilton County, we cover the entire county of Hamilton, a little over 480-something square miles, 806,000 residents. And there are what we call PSAPs, or public safety answering points. Within Hamilton County, there are two primary answering points, which would be ours, the Hamilton County Emergency Communication Center, and then the city of Cincinnati. Outside of that, there are some smaller centers, but we take the majority of the 911 traffic as it comes in first, and then process the calls. When a person's calling 911, we think of 911 as being this number that's been around forever, and it's a universal number. And but the reality is that it really only started here in our region in August of 1988, so it hasn't been around for long periods of time. But we've all grown accustomed to it, and we depend on it to work and work reliably, regardless of where we travel. So over the course of time, we've evolved our technology to try to include technology that is specifically useful for certain types of demographics and certain types of groups that have different types of needs. And in this particular application, as we're speaking about, people with special needs that may not have complete mobility, may not have the complete ability to hear and speak. We have a variety of offerings that technology, just like I'm sure they've seen their life changed with technology, that the lives of us in the 911 industry also have changed. To talk about where we operate for within Hamilton County, it's basically the 48 municipalities outside of the city of Cincinnati. But one thing I can assure people is that we have a coordination of all the 911 centers throughout the state of Ohio, and quite frankly, we know that we're in tri-state areas, so there is significant coordination even on a statewide basis between Indiana and Kentucky. But within Hamilton County, I serve as an appointed position that's called the 911 Coordinator for the county. And so I'm the one that's responsible to make sure that everybody within our county has the same exact access to the same exact type of technology and service. And we work very hard to do that. Let me know, kind of guide me where we want to talk about technology, where we want to talk about access to it, or like we start at the basics, or
sure. So, ironically, here at TruCare, we actually do provide services throughout Ohio. A majority of our services are provided in Butler, Warren, Claremont, and obviously Hamilton County. So the people that would come here for our adult day program are from all four of those counties in Southwest Ohio. But they all pretty much would follow the same protocol in calling 911 or emergency services. For those folks who can't not necessarily speak clearly or don't speak at all, how can they relay communications to your staff in a time of an emergency?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's I appreciate knowing what your service area is. one thing I would say to the people in the service areas there is that most likely, if I were to ask a random person on the street, hey, can you name the 911 director for your area? They would probably draw a complete blank. You don't need it. You don't need to know that. But nonetheless, if I were to ask you, do you expect to be able to call 911 where you go? Of course, everyone does that. One thing I'd like to say to those people that are outside of Hamilton County area is that I personally know each one of the directors for those regions and can tell you that without any hesitation that you have access to probably some of the best 911 technology and the 911 training and the personnel behind that, bar none from anywhere else in the country. We have certain minimum training standards within the state of Ohio that everyone must adhere to. And as a result, that has really leveled the playing field for what type of service you're going to get. So when you call 911, regardless of where you're at in this service area for a TruCare, you're going to get a trained, an experienced professional who's going to be able to give you not just answer the call and make sure someone gets to you, but they're going to be able to give you pre-arrival instructions, things that can help you to provide some very basic first aid prior to the arrival of EMS. Another a good thing about the area that we live in is we have an incredibly fast response time. Almost everywhere within the area that you provide has a 4 to 6 minute response time. And while in some areas in the concentrated populated areas of Hamilton County, it's even less than 4 minutes. So we're very fortunate that we, in general, have a very quick response time. To kind of gauge the conversation related to people that have communication difficulties or that cannot speak or cannot hear, what we have available to us is a combination of things. There are, as I'm sure you're aware, there are translation services, or there are the relay services, the Ohio Relay Service, for example, where you can make contact with them and then they call us to tell what you need. Sometimes you may have an emergency that doesn't allow you the discretionary time to try to make contact with the relay service, to make the contact with us. And in those cases, you can text to 911. And when you text to 911, it's very simple. You start the text as if you would start it to anyone else. And most people don't have 911 as their contact in their phone. So you just simply put, 2 in the to field, 911, and then write the message that, of what you need and what's going on. And that will be, we receive those text messages.
So how does that get directed to you? Like if I'm in Hamilton County, why does it know to go to you versus Claremont County?
So within cell phones is a location technology that actually within the cell phone network, I should say, that recognizes the geography from which that call is coming. We drive up and down the highways all day long and pass cell phone towers and really don't think much of it. But those cell phone towers are all located within a database. That database then has a geographic boundaries of what areas are serviced by those cell phone towers. So at minimum, we know the location of the cell phone tower that the call came in on, and based on that, it'll route it to the appropriate 911 center. Take a step higher. Every phone, if it is a more modern smartphone, and in today's world, to be honest with you, most of the legacy type of phones are being slowly but surely retired.
Sure.
So, but I understand the elderly, some elderly folks appreciate a very simple flip phone with very minor apps and things like that. Those will still text the 911. We may not just get the exact location.
Sure.
On a cell phone, a modern smartphone type cell phone, we're getting GPS coordinates that are accurate to within 10 to 15 feet of where you're standing with that phone, depending on your access to the open sky and GPS signaling. On a text message, we may or may not get the exact location coming with the text. Again, there's a lot of factors that depend on what information we're receiving as to whether or not we get the GPS location. Okay,
so speaking of GPS, longitude, latitude. Mm-hmm. So let's say I do not have the ability to speak. I do text 911. Mm-hmm. It originates there at Hamilton County Communications, and it comes up on your screen, your call taker. Mm-hmm. So based on those coordinates, does it then place the coordinates on a map so that you know where you're going to respond to? Is that how it works?
Yes, and so we'll see a dot on the map, if you will, and or a pin, whatever you want to call it, and that pin then corresponds to what we call a dispatchable location. It will give you the nearest address to that particular dot or pin. The challenge becomes for folks that live in rural areas that are well off of a roadway or a highway or what have you, or, I live in a cul-de-sac, for example, that backs up to another street. And if I happen to be in my backyard, it's going to pick up the address of the street behind me. I mean, so while the technology is very good, that human interaction is really what we need to speak to someone to get your address. And so...
Okay, so speaking of that, okay, so... it would behoove anyone, whether you're able to speak or not, to know the address of where you're at.
Yes, absolutely.
And if it's a larger property, such as you speak, where exactly on that property they are and with what location within that dwelling, so that they know where to go. If you're a medical emergency, you can't even move.
Right.
You're going to have to articulate that to get people to you.
Exactly. And as we talk about mapping and we talk X, Y coordinates, there's another coordinate in there called the Z coordinate, which is your elevation. Some cell phones do report the elevation, but really the elevation to us doesn't necessarily correspond with I'm on the first floor, second floor, or third floor. So think of high rises, think of being in a hospital, think of it being in a large facility, hotel where we don't know what floor you're on. So as you look at a map, we're looking at a 2D map that shows will pinpoint your location fairly accurately. That elevation, however, really doesn't necessarily correlate directly to us in a high-rise building. So it's important to, especially for those folks, maybe you have a caregiver that comes in, and the caregiver is a person who visits, I don't know how many, but 10 or 15 patients a day. I wouldn't reasonably expect them to know every single address they're at, but they need to know that address when they need to call for EMS. And one of the things, if you think about it, when are you going to call EMS? I don't know. I mean, emergencies happen.
For sure.
So
and
you don't know.
For that matter, if you know you have a medical problem and maybe you're visiting someone, have them place that out on a piece of paper on the kitchen cabinet, on the refrigerator. If they're going to leave you at home alone, have it written down somewhere just in case. I mean, think ahead.
Right. And that's the same thing. A lot of folks are traveling and they stay with other relatives or friends that they're not familiar with the location. So while again we can pinpoint with reasonable accuracy, it's always helpful to know the dispatchable address to that. So a simple sometimes if people don't know their address, our call takers are asking, can you find a piece of mail laying around? I mean, everybody gets junk mail, so there's plenty of junk mail. Can you find a piece of mail? But really to be better prepared, the great thing to do would be to have that on a laminated or just put it into a sheet protector of some sort and have that address somewhere on the refrigerator or on a common area where the phone is at.
Some homes still have the address on the mailbox out front. Maybe they would know to go out front immediately and look at the mailbox.
Right.
If all else fails, maybe in an intersection. We kind of joked before we spoke today about, giving a generic location like Kroger's. Well, I mean, there's 40 to 50 Kroger's in Hamilton County, and that's not going to get police and fire to your location.
No, exactly. And like we were talking about, if I were to tell you I'm just down the street from the intersection where UDF and the BP station are, right by Dunkin' Donuts, I mean, literally that's dozens of intersections throughout the region. So knowing your dispatchable address. Now, without getting too highly technical, but another thing that we have access to that many people have never even heard of is a system called What Three Words. So you alluded to mapping coordinates earlier, and we've all seen these mapping coordinates, where it's the latitude, the longitude. It's very detailed. We went to a decimal-based system where it's a little bit easier. But if I were to tell you I'm at -84.38333 and 39 degrees, 0.05666666,
you lost me.
Yeah, you're lost. So another company has mapped the entire world in 10-meter squares called What Three Words. You can download an app that's called What Three Words. So if you are on a location that is somewhat rural, that's off of a main road, that's in the middle of nowhere, it'll create a what three words. So, and the words will be very simple, like table, bottle, stand, and we type in table, bottle, stand, and boom, it puts us right where you're at. So the user can have this app on their phone, and they can find their what three words. We can correlate the what three words to where you're at. Responders, actually, we use them, and you may think, well, when would I ever need this if I'm not in a dispatchable location? We have a lot of canoe rentals, kayak rentals that are scattered throughout the county, and these folks are on canoes and kayaks and just floating down the river in the middle of nowhere. And so rather than trying to say, hey, I put in up here, I was supposed to take a 4-hour canoe trip. I'm an hour into it. Yeah. So with this what three words, we can pinpoint within a 10 meter by 10 meter square of exactly where you're at. So again, what three words? It's a free app. And I would say that almost all 911 centers in this area now are even using the what three words. We use it a lot more for, think about, I'm in a parking lot of Kroger, just like you had talked about. Those parking lots of some of the superstores are rather expansive and cover many, many acres. And rather than saying that, if you look at the last S in the word Kroger's, I'm on this aisle down at the end, we go to the what three words, and boom, there you are.
Sure. So most of the folks listening don't even know that you and I worked together as dispatchers back in the late 80s, early 90s. So we've seen the technology change quite a bit from the MDTs that we use to 911. So we know from our experience that the best response is planning ahead.
Sure.
And one thing that people can do now is enter their personal and medical history in certain files that will be accessible by dispatchers?
Yes. There's a variety of methods in which you can pre-plan the need for EMS, and I think that the folks that you work with may be actually a little more prepared than what the average everyday person is. Most people go about their lives never expecting to even have a contact with 911, whereas the folks that you operate with know they have certain medical needs and need the ability to quickly establish, what it is that they have going on. So there's a couple of different ways that you can pre-plan this information. One is we participate with a program called Smart 911, and it's very simple. If you go to smart911.com, you can fill out an online safety profile. In fact, when you go onto that Smart 911 website, you put in your address, and it will tell you if Smart 911 service is available in your area. So I can tell you that it is a nationwide program, and hold that thought because we'll get to that here in a minute. But when you put a basic profile in there, when traditional 911 started, when 911 was, and at the end of the day, 911 is a phone number, and the 911 industry has to consistently try to ebb and flow with the needs of the society and the needs and demands of technology, if you will. But when it all started, it was a phone number, and really it was a phone number that went to a phone that was plugged into a wall at a specific location in a specific house. So you called 911, we got the phone number, and if you remember the early days of 911, we got just the phone number. Enhanced 911 came along, and that gave us the address, and we thought that was the greatest thing in the world. Well, fast forward to where everyone's got a cell phone on their hip now, and that cell phone, while it may provide us with the location of that phone, it doesn't tell us who owns the phone. It doesn't tell us who's the responsible billing party. It gives us zero other identifying information. So with Smart 911, you can register your own profile. That profile can include what we call your landline phone. So if you still have a traditional a traditional wire-based landline phone in your house, you can register that phone. You can subsequently then register the individual cell phones that are contained within that household. So when you call 911, and this is the only time that we can access this database, obviously folks are worried about their own individual privacy. We completely respect that. So while I know some people would be a little nervous about giving the government any information, really you're not giving it to the government. You're giving it to an independent third party that we contract with to maintain that data. And I can tell you that their security is absolute top-notch, U.S.-based storage. I mean, so we've vetted that out, in that you can put as much information as you'd like in there. You can put as little information in there as you like. I always try to target the if you think about a family that has 3 or 4 children who are going to various high schools. If I get a 911 call from a random cell phone, I can't tell if that I have the phone number to it, but I can't tell is that an adult cell phone, is that a child's cell phone, is it a teenager cell phone, whose cell phone is it? Whereas if you register that phone in advance with a smart 911 system and it does call 911. We have more people and more resources, and we can say, hey, we got a 911 call with no voice contact to this number. Your profile says that's one of your phones. Or
Sure.
Is there something going on, or do you know where they're at? And it can help us to help you find a loved one who may be in need. So with a smart 911 profile, it really accelerates that transfer of information of what's going on, and allows us to help you in a much more expeditious manner. In addition, that the responders, now again, keep in mind that we've said, I said earlier that we have a 4 to 6 minute response time in most of our area. So responders do have access to a link that when you make that 911 call and it has a smart 911 profile, we can send them a URL that for a very short period of time they can call up your profile. But most often, I would say that people are on the scene quicker than they can get to a URL in their computer. So, but nonetheless, it's a good start. In addition to the Smart 911 profile that you can create, again, it's a free service. You need to just go to smart911.com. In addition to that, almost every manufacturer of cell phone has some type of emergency contact information within that cell phone. So whether you have an iPhone or an Android, and those are the 2 primary operating systems that I'm familiar with, both of those systems have an emergency contact section. In the iPhone, for example, you go to your health section, you can fill out, again, as much information as you want or as little information as you want. But the more information you have in advance, and if you were to suddenly pass out or have a sudden cardiac arrest, when that information comes into us, again, that phone has to make the 911 call. Then we see that emergency contact data at the communication center. Okay. And it's very helpful for situations where you can't speak on your own behalf.
For sure. So with all the new technology that is out there with regards to communication, public safety communication, I would say give us the 5 most important things that people need to consider when communicating with public safety.
I think if I were to quantify that, I think first off, call sooner. Don't hesitate to wait. I can tell you, without hesitation, that the responders that we have in our area care about the community that they operate in. Oftentimes, the responders live in the same communities, so. Don't delay things. And this is coming from a guy who had a heart attack and waited hours and hours and hours before I, went to the hospital. And in hindsight, that amount of time you get, you can never replace. So if you think you're having a problem, don't hesitate to make the call sooner rather than later. The next thing when you do call would be to try to be as aware as you can about we call in the business a dispatchable location. So what is the address? And where it becomes even more complicated, there are areas where a street may have multiple names. And so be aware of what the 3 names are. If it's normally called, I'm just going to use US 42, but sometimes it's called, Sharon Road. Sometimes it's called Lebanon Road. Sometimes it's called Reading Road. Be aware of where you live and what the accurate, probably the best thing to say is what the post office, if you're going to mail a letter, what is that address? Also, make sure you know your telephone number and a way to call back. So, technology is not completely perfect. And so in the 911 industry, once we get the address, we find out what's the nature of your call, what is the address, and we ask what's the nature of the call. Mainly, do you need police, fire, EMS? Then we're asking where do you need it? Then we're going to say, if I lose contact with you right now, what is a way for me to get back in touch with you? So that's the phone number. And so I would say, again, call sooner than later. Know the address, know the phone number. And then, a brief summary if there's something that is an unusual access. So I'm in an apartment that's around the back of the building. If there's a separate, location for you to get into the building. And then are there certain parking considerations? Keep in mind that when EMS and fire and police are responding, they're bringing, in most cases, very large vehicles. And so if there's something that's going to inhibit their ability to get to you, you might want to know that off the bat. But I think those are the top 5 things that I would recommend.
And the situation's already, it's stressful.
Right.
So the person calling probably thinks, I need to get off the phone, I need to get back, or whatever the situation might be. They need to take their time.
Right. Yeah.
Speak clearly, and try to explain what's going on, because that helps fire, police, EMS prepare what equipment to bring, the necessary equipment to help them.
Yeah, and a lot of times the call taker from the 911 side of things is going to say, "Tell me exactly what's going on. Tell me exactly what happened. Tell me exactly what you need." And so also I would let people know that in most of the dispatch centers that we operate with. Most centers have a 2-tiered type of response on the call-taking side of things. And what I mean by 2-tiered is that there may be a call taker and a dedicated dispatcher. So the person you're speaking to, you might think to yourself, hey, stop asking me these questions, just get them here. Well, the reality is most of what we monitor is a particular metric that we look at. We monitor what's called a processing time, the time from the call is answered until the call is dispatched. And in order to facilitate it as quickly as possible, a call taker is a dedicated call taker. They're typing the information into a computer that's being transmitted to a radio dispatcher. So just because you don't hear anything happening and you don't hear them talking to what you think would be a fire, EMS, or police officer, chances are
help's on the way.
Yeah, help's on the way. Someone else is doing that. And so one of our protocols will say, we are dispatching an ambulance, we are dispatching fire. Would you like to stay on the line for additional medical instructions? And but most people don't hear that, and understandably so. We know that the callers we're dealing with are in a highly charged emotional state. We do our best to recognize that and address that, and the way we address that is through most of the call takers will continue to lower their voice or slow down their speech, rather than I'm not going to yell at someone and say tell you to you need to calm down. That doesn't do anything. So we use slow, repetitive. This is what we're trained to do. And to slow down, like, help me to help you. What is the address? Where are you located? What is going on? And by doing that and drawing the attention, rather than this constant escalation of things, everyone's been in some type of an argument, and
Sure.
I raise up a little bit, then you raise up a little bit, then they raise up, and so
back and forth.
We specifically train our folks to not do that, and to do this persistent repetition is what we call it.
De-escalation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think those 5 tips are the best things that we can leave people with. I think everybody should be extremely proud of the 911 system that you are part of and the folks that work for you. And I'm excited to have you here today to speak to this. And thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
Sure.
And I would just tell our listening audience, don't hesitate to call. 911 is there to help. And don't delay. If you've got a problem, call it for the right reasons. You don't need to test 911. It does work.
Yep.
It's been proven time in, time out for many years.
Right.
But again, thank you for your service and thanks for your time today.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.